College football fans, welcome back to the College Ball Show. He's Marshall, I'm Chris, and we're here to discuss what else? College football. And boy, oh boy, do we got a show for you. We got a lot to talk about. We had some really good games. We had some upsets. We had an almost upset. Yeah, I'm talking to Clemson in Boston College. They were down in that game, 28-13, 34-28. They ended up getting it done. But, man, they got an interesting challenge with Notre Dame coming up without their number one guy. So Oklahoma State went down. Kansas State went down. We talked about how the Big 12 was screwed for the national scene. Well, I doubt they're not, they're really screwed. No undefeated teams, and we're not even that deep into the season. The Pac-12 is returning this week as well. Like I said, there's a variety of great games on the docket. Even like a Indiana, Michigan, all of a sudden, you look and go, oh, wow, that's a good game. That's kind of an interesting game. Georgia, Florida is on the docket. I already talked about Clemson, Notre Dame. I mean, there is some games here that we're going to break down, preview, and predict. BYU, Boise State, that's going to be a good game. BYU facing a ranked opponent, and we know they're 7-0 now, so we got to kind of keep an eye on both those teams, I guess. But if this is your first time, so we'll get into this. We'll start with recap. Of course, we'll preview and predict. We'll talk, of course, betting lines against the spread, kind of hardcore barn burners. Maybe they're flying under the radar with all these top flight games. We'll just give the hardcore something to think about. And, of course, the crafty, crappy pick of the week, which someone put up some numbers in that game. We'll get to that. That's how we close the show every week. If this is your first time listening to the College Ball Show, welcome. It streams live right here on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-A-Dope Radio. It streams live at Archives. However, you don't have to go to Blog Talk and download the show right off the browser or listen to it in the browser. You can find this show under the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Player FM, tune in, really all across the board. We're also part of the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network, which is available almost everywhere, including Spotify. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to thegruelingtruth.com. It's football, basketball, baseball, boxing, everything in between. And one more thing before we get into the nitty-gritty of Week 9 and preview and predict Week 10, I got something for you. If you're thinking about cutting the cord or you're not happy, it's called AT&T TV Now. It's live streaming cable. They do have a 7-day free trial. There's no annual contracts. Once you sign up, the plans start as low as $55 a month. You can stream it anywhere. They have the cloud DVR. And right now, if you sign up, you get a 30-day free trial of HBO Max. Here's a kicker. If you sign up for the Max package, that already includes HBO Max plus a free month of Showtime, which is normally $11. That's called AT&T TV Now. Like I said, live streaming cable. I'm going to go ahead and bring in my co-host Marshall and see how he's doing on this wonderful evening. It got to like 58 today, dude. And for all the cold weather in the middle of October, that kind of scared us all. High is 6. The whole week is sunny. High is 66, high is 64, high is 69. And then by next week, we're starting to see snow again in the forecast by Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, potentially. So this is the last week for people to want to go outside and enjoy it anyway. How are things going straight down I-35 in Texas, sir?
Not too bad. Not too bad. COVID numbers are going up, but that's across the whole darn country. So, yeah, I think my dad actually might come down and golf over Thanksgiving break with me because I think his golf season. From your numbers, you said my dad might be able to golf this week. He lives just 20 minutes down the road from you. But after that, I think the golf season's over. So my dad might play some golf in November with me. And I got my birthday coming up the end of the month. So November is normally always treat me well. I will say I always like to. I normally I offer a pick on this on our podcast, and then I don't bet it. And I kick myself as to why I didn't bet a pick. But Chris, I'm also man enough to, at my age of 35, to say, hey, you said a dumbass quote last week, so I'm going to call my own ass out. My dumbass said that there is no way that a garbage ass Sparty team that got embarrassed by Rutgers with 8 turnovers, there is no way in hell they can lose to Michigan. That's not, I think my quote was, it's not even a rivalry game because Michigan State never beats them. I get done coaching. I drive to my favorite establishment for cocktails and drinks and wings on Saturday, and I fucking pull up and I see the audio with Michigan State, Michigan, and I was like, you gotta be shitting me. What seriously? You lost to Rutgers and had 8 turnovers.
Like horribly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was like the worst display of Spartan football.
And Michigan, as we documented, okay, they played good against your Gophers, sure, but the Gophers had a special teams plethora of craziness that maybe made that score look worse than it was.
Yeah, we gifted them 3 touchdowns.
So to the media, if you're not a Gopher fan, didn't watch the game, okay, hey, Michigan had a good win, sure, I'll give them that. Okay, Michigan's back. All right, here we go. And then you lose. And some people had that as a 25-point spread. How in God's name, and even God is probably thinking, how do you lose,
some money
Chris?
on the spread. That's what God's thinking.
How do you lose as a 25-point favorite to your rival who just played like shit? I don't know. I'll gladly call myself out. I said, there's no way it happens. My dumb self should have bet Sparty. That would have paid off a couple months of rent. A 25-point month. You're talking probably +9, +1,100. What an embarrassing loss for Harbaugh. My God, man. What's your gut say on that one, my friend? Because when I got off work and I saw the last couple minutes of the game, I'm like, holy shit. I'm gonna have to go on the podcast and say I made a fool out of myself.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, not that I thought they'd for sure, of course, win by all those points or whatever. You just don't know. Sure. And of course, 8 turnovers is a lot of turnovers, in that first game. But still, and not only that, but let's be honest. Last year they weren't Michigan State either. Let's just not, they weren't a Michigan State team. So, it was 20-7. Well, it was 17-7. They got a field goal. 2 back-to-back 8-play drives. And by the way, the Sparty had a 10-play drive that they missed a field goal, and they could have been up by a little bit more too. But back-to-back punts, touchdown, 27-17, and this is where it's great, but also like, wow, 18-play drive, 93 yards, so that's going to take some time. But they just couldn't get a stop. At the end of that game, it didn't really matter. There was only 36 seconds left in the game, and they got a first down. The game was over. But, yeah, dude, I don't know. I mean, they didn't turn the ball over, Michigan. They had the time of possession by like 6 minutes. They had 10 penalties. I think that's where you can exploit it. They threw the ball 52 times, which seems pretty intense when you got a guy – when you got a running – you got a running game. You got a big old offensive line that's usually steady at running. And then, by the way, you got Milton, too, who can run the ball. So it's funky. They were 7-17, which is pretty good on third down. Like, you're looking around and you're just like, geez, what did this – talk about bang for your buck, though, when it comes to passing. 32 attempts from Michigan State, 52, like I said, on the other side, but 10 yards per pass compared to about 5.8. That's a difference maker. But, yeah, I mean, timely penalties, like it's not like you can point to just one thing. It just, I don't know, man. And Harbaugh, we were fair with them for a while, which we're trying to be fair with everyone, right? And usually if one of us aren't, I either say I'm biased or you say you're biased, or we call each other out because we're biased about a certain team or, something like that. That's different. That's totally different. But in this sense, we realized that 2 seasons came down to just a first down that we still don't know if the Ohio State player got it. in a punt return block thing. All you had to do was punt and win the game. We know your seasons got fucked off of those, so we get it. You're that close, but it feels like if you don't, it's hard to get back to that spot though. Those look like Final Four type seasons, but it's hard to keep getting back to them, especially when you play in a tough division. And Penn State is coming off a nice run of years too. So it's hard. It's difficult. So you got to kind of take advantage of it. You got to strike when the kettle's hot. And right now it feels like they're going backwards, maybe not in recruiting, but just in general. It's a long season, but this is not the game you need to go ahead and win, lose to. So yeah, this is crazy, dude. I was not expecting it. And I'm starting to get a little nervous now with the PJ Fleck Michigan stuff. If they lose 3 games this year, 5-3, well, I suppose there's an extra game for everybody. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's getting mighty hot on that seat there at Ann Arbor.
And, I actually really liked how you mentioned the statistics, because normally in a game like this, Chris, where a team does blow a 25-point Vegas cover, you would say, oh, my God, these stats are overbearing. But their quarterback was 32 of 51 for 300 yards. That's respectable for college. And they ran the ball 34 times for $152. So they ran 94 plays of offense. That's actually really effing good. Like, that's, like a lot of times during the season, like I think a team like a team like Memphis or UCF, that they aim for 80 to 90 plays. So from a play perspective, you had the ball a lot.
Yeah.
You said they didn't have a turnover. There's no fumbles. You're right. I think what it really tells you from the fact that there's no outglaring numbers is the fact that these actually were 2 competitive teams. So maybe we had a rough new beginning to the Michigan State's coach, who was coaching his first game ever for Sparty. And we were again reminded that, hey, Sparty and Michigan, whether it's college basketball or college football, these teams really do hate each other. There is that Michigan pride, but I was so blown away at how bad they looked. But man, props to Sparty. You get a new coach to come in. They had their ruffle the feathers with D'Antoni. He leaves, and everything was kind of a mess. You get blown out the door by Rutgers. That was Rutgers' best win in the Big Ten in the past 20 years. And you walk into your diehard rival's backyard and beat them by 3 like that. That's a hell of a win. Maybe that's a good encouraging step for a team in Sparty, who you said, Chris, for the past couple of seasons really hasn't done their part. And I know I know you didn't expect this. I didn't tell you about this, but I was like, man, this is too good of a story to pass up to start off the show, because normally in college football, if any team is favored by 20 to 25 points, that's one of those things where, hey, I'm going to bet 10 teams who are all huge favorites and bet 10 teams on the money line for $100 to win like a couple hundred. It's one of those things in college football where, well, Clemson's going to win this week. Bama's going to win this week. If I can find 8 or 9 big favorites and I bet them all for $100, I can win like $1,000 or something like that. So hopefully Michigan was not in your bet big favorite covered spread money line bets this week, Chris.
Seriously. And Clemson was in that realm the week before, because it's like, are they for sure going to beat them by that much or whatever? But all of a sudden we saw the obviously the number go down once we knew the first pick in the draft coming up, 2021, was not going to be any. At COVID. Clemson just held on for dear life. It was a 7-7 game, fumble return and a touchdown. They had scored a touchdown, then had the fumble return, made it 21-7. Got a field goal, Clemson. Boom, 28-10. Another 15-play drive, which has nothing to do with offense for Clemson, which is still kind of like, damn, 15-play drive, almost 8 minutes on you, huh? Wow, that's kind of interesting. And then, it was 28-13 at half. Like I said, 18-point game at one point there in the second. And to score that touchdown right away, force a punt, score the touchdown right away, force a punt, score the touchdown, get a fumble, didn't do much with it. Had a huge pick when it was 32-28, huge pick. And then obviously the safety as well. Clemson, by the hair of their chinny chin chin, get it done with a young buck at quarterback. But you know who's not going to be there in the Notre Dame game.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I really have nothing against Clemson. I could really give a shit less, but I hope they lose. Because we always hear their coach, Dabo, talk about, oh, the media never gives us, they don't believe it. He always has some bullshit whiny excuse, and I'm tired of it. He was even complaining about, he's always saying something. So just because I'm tired of him, I hope Clemson loses. Speaking of big spreads, they opened up as a 32-point spread against BC, and they closed at 24. So a ton of people made money off the Boston College because people actually thought Boston College was a respectable team. And
they were like 40 the week before, weren't they? Wasn't it like 40?
44 against Syracuse. Yeah, no,
yeah,
Syracuse
there it is. Yep,
awful.
Syracuse.
But even so, Syracuse was down 6 points in the third quarter of that game.
Yeah.
And then Clemson won by like 26 or something. So
but they
there's definitely, there's an infatuation of Clemson with a point spread. And from a Vegas standpoint, I kind of get that too, because if you don't make Clemson a big favorite, people are going to pound the hell out of them. And, you know, if you make a line, you know, smaller than normal, you're going to lose. So, but I do think Chris, there was too much of a, Trevor Lawrence is out, their backups just fine. And we don't know anything about the kid just because he hasn't played.
Yeah.
And now the same kid is going to walk in Notre Dame. So we're kind of not to jump too far ahead, but we're kind of doing two things here at once of, hey, Clemson, realistically, probably shouldn't have been that big of a favorite. They did find a way to win. Boston College had a couple of lucky plays go their way in the first half. To give Clemson a lot of credit, Chris, they did come back and win. But again, speaking of Vegas, Clemson's a 6-point favorite at Notre Dame. So this is a team who's had a crazy line against Syracuse. And I'll defend that one because Syracuse is awful. They got killed by Liberty. But the BC line was too high. And now you're going in to play a team who's, we're supposed to be like a top 15 team in Notre Dame at their stadium. And you're getting 6 points again with a backup QB who struggled last week. Man, the Clemson love is high. But again, Chris, I guess just kind of wrapping my point with him, you talked about the game and some big plays here and there and how Clemson's defense stood up. There is part of that DNA. We were talking before our show about how I've always been a Phillip Rivers guy, so that kind of made me a Chargers fan. And the Chargers DNA in the NFL is to lose close games. That's just they've blown a lot of games this year, and they've done that for the past 5 or 6 years. There is something to give Clemson credit for, is they have the DNA of winning close games. There's a lot of teams who, hey, our backups in, we're down 15, like, oh, Christ, here we go. Like, here goes our chance for an undefeated season. A lot of college football teams, I believe, in that situation would have folded. But Clemson held on and bucked it up and got the job done. So I'll give them credit for that. That is probably a winning mentality that's been installed there. But that was closer than they probably wanted. And now, again, I'm not sure why they're favored like they are. Maybe it's the Clemson love from Vegas. But they got themselves a little bit of a hassle, Chris, and I enjoy seeing it because normally they pretty much have a cakewalk almost every year in the ACC teams for the past 5 or 6 seasons.
Well, it's because they don't have Miami every year. I was kidding. No, but just to add that to it, in Notre Dame, by the way, I think as part of it, they haven't looked great yet. So maybe that's part of that spread.
100%.
That was the second largest halftime deficit overcome by a number one team, 15 points at half. But just to kind of go along with your point that you're talking about, a lot of teams wouldn't have been able to come with that, especially, and it's not like that's a backup quarterback stat, you know what I mean? And it's not this of course it's not a run-of-the-mill backup either. This kid's probably going to be good or great maybe, right? But, the starter's pretty damn good himself, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like that's a huge backup too. That's a big I mean, I hate to say huge drop because we don't know what this kid's going to be, but as of right now, it's clearly a huge drop because it's like Justin Fields, who, by the way, if Justin Fields keeps playing the way he is, he's going to be the second pick overall, not just top 10. But, considering where he's at, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, we're going to get into that. And that running back, who's the Clemson running back?
Etienne.
Etienne.
Yeah.
Etienne. I always mess that up. He set the record now for most touchdowns. FBS record with 42nd career games with the TD, and it's all time in the ACC. He's got the most touchdowns. So that dude's obviously putting in a lot of work. And we'll talk about a variety of things, but this is a big game here. Ohio State, Penn State. Ohio State really never was in danger of losing this game. They looked sharp pretty much on both sides. They had a spread attack, 318 and 208. That's passing and rushing, whereas Penn State only put up 44 yards rushing. Didn't turn the ball over, held the ball well. And like I said, it seems like every game, maybe like the last, I don't know when it started happening with Fields last year, but sometime last year and this year, he's looking really good. And Ohio State really just handled Penn State, who, by the way, is 0-2 all of a sudden.
I'm shedding no tears for Penn State being 0-2. That actually makes me smile a little bit. And for Ohio State, they're just taking care of business. Again, they've literally become the Clemson of the Big Ten, who is just the top team they favored each year. They have a good coach. They have a good quarterback. The teams are actually kind of similar in a lot of ways. As you mentioned, I'm used to watching this game with like a crazy sellout crowd. Again, I'm not a fan of either team, but Penn State normally does like all the fans wear a white shirt or something. And normally it's a pretty entertaining game to watch. But as Ohio State has done a lot like Bama for the past couple of years, Chris, Ohio State dominates the first halves. They've been doing this now for a couple of seasons where at halftime you can almost feel like the game's almost over. And again, if you look at the halftime score here, 21-6, like that's a pretty big hole to dig yourself out of. And I mean, it's not like they ran up the score and dropped 60 on them, but 38-25, as you mentioned, the loss was never really crossing the mind of any Ohio State fan. Justin Fields had himself a nice day, 28 of 34, 4 touchdowns, 318 yards, no picks. Like, that's a pretty damn good stat line. It's just they're taking care of business. I think as an Ohio State fan, you're probably expecting your team to run the table in the Big Ten and play for a national title. And I think that's just the mindset they have. No, there's no 100% chance they're going to, but I think that's their mindset. And they're just you have a great quarterback, you have a good quarterback, or I should say a good defense. Like, I think they're just kind of going through the motions, and I hope someone does upset them for the sake of this season. But yeah, a nice win, a win they had to have. And yeah, for Penn State, that's a tough start to the year. You have the crazy, flukish, bizarre ending versus Indiana. Mm-hmm. And then you have a tough opponent that beats you just straight up. Now, if you're a Penn State fan, you got to hope to win out just to have a respectable kind of season for you and maybe get into like a nice bowl game.
Yeah, it's true. And speaking of taking care of business, Alabama just did that. I don't think that air it all 60 passes a game is going to take over the SEC anytime soon. 41-0. Notre Dame took care of business 31-13. Georgia in a tight game with Kentucky. This felt like the Kentucky team of last year. Cincinnati just mopped the floor with Memphis 49-10. Texas and A&M went back and forth, but A&M ended up winning. Florida ended up winning. BYU ended up winning really clean. West Virginia actually had a nice little upset there. Iowa State, Oklahoma, a bunch of teams, got the job done. But let's kind of zoom in on an upset of the week here. Last week, Texas and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State was unbeaten. They were the 6th-ranked team in the country, and those are one. They were definitely one of them that still had the national potential anyway, being unbeaten. That's no longer gone. Really fun game though. Really, I mean, this was an exciting game. 41-21 to 34 in overtime. A big win. I don't think a ton of Oklahoma State. I do, now that I've seen the more of them, though, we knew they had the running back, but that quarterback's pretty damn good too. Sanders, he's a good player, man. How old is that guy? Is he like a redshirt sophomore or something like that? Let me check. He's a sophomore.
I think that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yep. So they got some potential there. I doubt the running back's going to hang out too much longer. I think he's a junior, so it'd be kind of silly for him to stay around as a running back just because the miles start to get going. But I mean, we said a month ago that the Big 12 is done, and now it's official.
So all afternoon, again, after I watched Oklahoma State demolish my under in Iowa State bet last week, I'm like, okay, this Oklahoma State has a much better defense than Texas, and their offense looks competent. And the whole day, I'm like, okay, I gotta bet Oklahoma State, gotta bet them. But I told myself, I'm like, holy shit, I don't think I've gambled on sports for a long time in my life, as Chris knows, for better or worse. And I was like, I don't think I've ever bet on Oklahoma State. Like, in all my years, I don't think I've ever bet them to win a game. So in the back of my head, I'm like, I can't do it. Like, there's something about me, just the back of my head, whether it's never betting them against Oklahoma, or I'm like, I can't bet Oklahoma State. And I watched the game, and just during the whole game, you're like, okay, Oklahoma State's in control, do something stupid. Oklahoma State's in control, do something stupid. Like, just over and over and over. It's like they didn't want to win. Like, there was so much on the table for them to win that game. And it's just dumb mistake. Like, you got the better defense. You had to lead in the first quarter. You had to lead at half. Like, everything in that game was for you. And they found a way to lose that game. They should 100% still be undefeated in their conference, and they just couldn't do it. It was special team mistakes, quarterback mistakes, defensive mistakes. It's like it was too good to be true, and they blew it. And as you said, that kind of blew away the chances of them having anyone represent them in the big dance this year. But yeah, that was honestly, if you're an Oklahoma State fan, I'd be pissed because you did so much wrong in that game when you still had a chance to win, and then you lose an OT. So I liked how ESPN had an article today saying, no, Texas is not back. Oklahoma State lost. Don't start the Tom Herman's going to be the coach again. Like, dude, you won the game. But, again, look at your record, and let's just calm the brakes down a little bit. But, yeah, for Oak State, man, you blew a great opportunity to have a really nice potential year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And this was going to be the year, right, to be able to do that.
Yeah, 100%.
Because, you look at the other squads and they're down. So it's like you got to take advantage. It was their first win, Texas's first win on the road over a top 10 opponent since 2010. I almost did that to them. 2010. So that was big. Another fairly big upset, but I wasn't shocked because I've seen how Virginia almost won some games, and I saw them the week before hanging in pretty tough with Miami, 44-41 in a losing effort. Howell had a good game, no doubt about it, and Brown caught a bunch of balls, 240 for 3 touchdowns. But 44-41, Virginia pulls off the upset, and that's one of several because Kansas State went down, and I didn't know West Virginia had won like the last 4 or 5 against them. I sure would have liked to known that going in when I was talking about that. But speaking of the Big 12, just in general, Oklahoma 62-28 and 48 points in the first half is the most since 2008 for Oklahoma. And then now since 2000, the most in that span, they've had 26 60-point games since 2000. Like I said, that's the most in that span. But West Virginia had lost 7 straight versus ranked opponents, and they come up and take Kansas State out, which I was not necessarily expecting. I've seen them a little bit this year, and they look pretty mediocre. Not to say that Kansas State was just awesome. Indiana kept it going. They're ranked high off of that Penn State win. First 2-0 start in the Big Ten since 1991.
Hey, as an Indiana fan, what more can you want, Chris? You had a crazy good start to the year. Now you beat a Rutgers team who had the same momentum going as you. And no one's expecting them to win the Big Ten, but this is a team who, for the past probably 5 or 6 or 7 seasons, everyone thinks, oh, this is year that Indiana creeps up a little bit better on the Big Ten power rankings. Like every year, they're kind of like, oh, they have a good offense, or they have a good coach, or they have a good quarterback. Yep. There's always like the
usually it is the offense.
Yeah, and their offense
Randall what's that? Randall
L. Oh, dude, I loved watching him growing up.
Yeah, he was fun.
He was. He was like he was an option quarterback. Yeah, they've always had some type of special piece, but this year, hey, you're 2-0, got all the confidence in the world. You're still gonna have to play the big dogs in your conference, but as an Indiana fan, this is your first time in a long time where, hey, we're optimistic and like we could maybe do something this year. And as we always like talk about, for the sake of just college football, this is huge for recruiting. Like, I mean, in Indiana, you're in a situation where, I mean, you're doing all you can to get kids around your state to come play for you.
And most of them hit jump shots, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You're a basketball school, and you still got Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan. You got so many schools breathing around your neck to come take maybe the top echelon kids you want. But hey, this is a great start for recruiting too. Like, you know, you're off to a good start. So I hope and hell, it's kind of good to see the underdog story sometimes pop up in college football. So this is for sure an unsuspected surprise. And now the tough part though is just maintaining it. Like, we see so many times in college football where, hey, you know, a good story coming up, and then you blow a game where you're, you know, playing in school as a 12-point favorite, you know. Well, you know, because there's that quote or the memo of, you know, a lot of college football players, these young kids who are 20, 21, 22, all of a sudden you're the big man on campus, and you start winning games you're not used to winning, all of a sudden, and you get cocky and forget about it.
And you end up getting COVID. Oh, sorry. I was talking about Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I was talking about the Badgers, but that's different. That's a different one, you know.
And I mean, this week, you know, a perfect example. You got to play Michigan. Like, if they win this game, that's a big step in the right direction, because Michigan's got to be pissed off as hell. You're going to get the best performance you can from Michigan. Win that one, that shows you're off to a good start. Then you have to go on the road to Sparty. Then you got Ohio State. So,
and you got Nebraska complaining about their schedule.
If Indiana can be 4-1 after these first 5, that's a hell of a start to the season. That's honestly a great start.
That would be ridiculous.
It would. That'd be something to be damn proud of if you're a Hoosier fan. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, you're off to a good start. If you beat Michigan, that shows that you're on something this year as a team.
I think that they should start recruiting like power forwards that can play tight end and DN. But that's just me. Georgia Southern, nice game on a Thursday night, 24-17 over South Alabama. Heartbreak Hotel, Maryland, 45-44. They got off to a great start, 14-0 and 21-7. Minnesota storms back, scores like 28 straight points or something, ends up giving up the lead in overtime, missed the extra point, 45-44. Yeah, that kid with the sports hernia, yeah, he mixed the extra point. Tulsa in East Carolina was fun on the hardcore level. I'll tell you what, though, what blew me away, 48-11, Auburn over LSU, just smacked them. Iowa had a lead on Northwestern. They ended up losing. Minnesota and Iowa are both 0-2, 21-28, just to finish that off with Northwestern. But it was nice that we had some West Coast teams back. We're going to get more. The Pac-12 comes back this week. That Wisconsin and Nebraska game right now is just straight up. Well, not right now. It's canceled. It's done. And North Texas and UTEP didn't play either. That's postponed. So we went from 0 to 2. So let's hope we can get this next week without a cancellation. But let's see. Any other games that you want to talk about before we move on? Because we do have a variety of items there. But, man, Auburn, I mean, LSU is just taking a whooping this year. I mean, they got to be really happy they won it all last year and it went so great, because this is we've heard of rebuilding years for them, but wow.
Yeah, and this is an Auburn team who, from the grace of the official gods, have won some games this year. You wouldn't have known that. That was, I don't know. When you make Bo Nix look that good in what's, I mean, it's not Bama Auburn, but LSU Auburn's a pretty damn big rivalry. So that LSU defense still has issues. You thought the quarterback in Finley, who looked really good last week in South Carolina, was gonna, keep growing. He went backwards. He got benched. Like, man, I know they lost a crazy amount of talent. They had 13 or 15 draft picks, and you had players opt out for COVID, and guys go pro. But still, like, your downfall is, I think, much more than many LSU fans predicted.
Yeah,
I think that Coach O, you got a national title, which is going to probably not get you fired this year. But there's a lot of LSU fans saying, what have you done for me lately, Coach? And lately their defense has been getting torched, and it's not even really been competitive. So I'm not, if you're an LSU fan, you got to be scratching your head because, it's not like there's any, besides Vanderbilt, who they already played this year. I guess maybe Mississippi State, who I think will actually beat them. Like, there's no cupcakes left. Like, what else is there left to do this year? You're going to have a couple more games where you give up 30 or 40 points and you're just shaking your head. So, I don't know. They had one of the best title teams ever last year, and now you're kind of just enjoying a year of, I guess, I don't know what to call it. But, that's tough. And if you're Auburn, hell, you finally had a good win where the refs didn't need to help you. So I guess that's a reason, Chris, to be optimistic for Bo Nix. I guess. I don't know. Maybe. Kind of. Sort of.
Possibly.
Possibly.
All right. Number 1, Clemson versus number 4, Notre Dame. We obviously know Lawrence is not in the picture. Maybe he can get at the last second, okayed. I don't know. I guess you never know. But maybe the president will sign like a waiver form or some shit. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe he'll get in the game. But as of right now, he's not going to be in the game. The last 2 weeks, we've seen a better performance by Notre Dame. They did have a closer than probably should have game against Florida State, especially against Louisville, 12-7. But the last couple of games, they have gotten the drum rolling, I guess. What's your take on this one? 5.5-point spread, Clemson favored. It does, like I said, seem like they're getting their shit together. I'm assuming that there's going to be a decent crowd. It's Indiana, and I'm assuming they're going to be able to do their thing to an extent. So I think the crowd will be there, not in waves, of course, but it'll be there. How do you view this one? It's good that they actually got the kid in a game and he had to be clutch, but it's going to be a lot tougher to come back in this team.
Let me ask you, would this be the biggest Notre Dame football win in the past 15 years if they won? Just from a college of rivalry
that
games,
USC game, not to bring it up, but they did beat USC in a big game in like a Rose Bowl or some shit. Or no, not a Rose Bowl, maybe something else. They sure as hell didn't beat Miami when it counted. They did smash Miami, but that's when they were a little down a couple of years before that. Then they got smashed. Probably. They got smashed against Bama in the championship game. Got smashed in the conference final or the semifinals a while back. Yeah, probably. We could say it's not without Lawrence or whatever, but yeah, I'd say so. Besides the USC game that I keep thinking right around 2007 or something like that. That's probably it. Yeah.
So just from that perspective alone, that the motivation's just got to be crazy. Like, if you win this game, like, again, Trevor Lawrence is out. Who if you're a Notre Dame fan, who cares? Like, you're in the ACC conference now. You get to play the top dog that beats up on everyone. You've really your school in theory for football has been a laughingstock for the fact that I think Notre Dame fans always feel they're one of the top schools in the whole nation. Like, this is your game to just put yourself back on the map in some sense and beat the best team in the country. Like, I think for obviously both teams are going to come out and play, but I think from Notre Dame perspective, this has to be like all the hype in the world. This has to be your best effort. You're at home. You got to be focused. Like, you had a bad game against Louisville, like whatever. This should be your time to shine just because everything's laid on the table for you. You're playing a quarterback who is playing his second ever college football game, who obviously last week showed you that he's not exactly comfortable yet, and I don't think anyone expects him to be a complete stud right out the break. But Chris, I just think from a college football standpoint, I think this game Notre Dame has to win. I think the Vegas line is giving Clemson love, which we talked about at the start of the podcast. But I think for Notre Dame, you got to find a way to win this game, just make it happen. You're going to get Clemson's best effort, obviously, too. Like I said, they have the DNA of how to win games from that program. But if you're Notre Dame, I'll take Notre Dame with the points to win. I just think this is too good of an opportunity to pass up. Forget about the sluggish performances. This needs to be your top echelon game, get the upset, and I mean, to throw in Clemson. And when's the last time they lost a freaking regular season ACC game? I guess would be the quarterback maybe getting hurt for Syracuse. That'd be about it.
Yeah, they've had some close calls, but yeah, you're right. And if Notre Dame is legit this year, then they have to win this game. They
100%.
You know, and Ian Book has played a lot of games, and he can run and pass. He's not the fastest dude, but he can just sneak up on you. And I'm not saying they're gonna run him like 15 times and have him running plays, but I'm saying when the pocket breaks down, he finds a way to get that first down more than you think just looking at him, because obviously he can pass too. But he's played a lot of ball, so he should be. I was gonna say with the points, I don't know if I'll just take Clemson straight up because I think they can win a tight game because they've proven time and time again. But with that points 5.5, do you anticipate that to go down as we get closer to kickoff, or stay right in that range?
The fact it's already there does surprise me. Like that, I didn't think it'd be that high. Like I don't know. I'm deeply surprised by that number. So it would. I mean, maybe
a little bit.
Maybe Clemson gets cut down to 5 or 4, but I mean that 6 is a sign of respect. But I think that Notre Dame, that money line as an underdog, is intriguing. I mean, hell, I just, again, like you said, if they're going to win a game, this is their one to win. So, I don't know. I am surprised by that. I would think there's a good betting value on Notre Dame.
Yeah. All right. So we're both going with the points. Notre Dame. Number 8 Florida against number 5 Georgia. The coach for Georgia, Bowen, he's obviously doing a great job there, but he's animated. He's out there trying to fight people, and he wants his stadium filled. Then he gets COVID. I don't know. I know they love him in Florida. That's for damn sure. Heading into this matchup, though, Trask is definitely not trash. He's been playing really good. I think he piled up another 4 touchdowns. That'd be crazy if he had 14 touchdowns. But 4 touchdowns last week. They kept it moving against Mizzou. Maybe Georgia last week was looking ahead to this matchup and thinking, well, Kentucky's not all that good this year, and that's why that was a tight game. It does kind of remind me, of the spot where the Arkansas game was close, but they ended up winning clearly. I want to say Georgia, pretty cleanly. 3.5 points, though. I really think it has to do with defense, to be honest with you, mostly. Because obviously, and they got a tad bit better of a running game, but we know they're going to throw up some points and all that. But when you give up 30 points yourself, and I'm talking about Florida there, I think that's where it's a little funky. But 42 points a game compared to 29 is a nice leap there too. I like Georgia to grind it out and win. I'm not blown away by 3.5. I do think I think that'll go up a little bit. The over under is 53.5. So I might go over in that one. I think we could see not a score fest like it's the Big 12, but I could see someone in the 30s and someone in the high 20s, which just doing that puts you over the spread. But I like Georgia to get this done in a competitive game, though. I think it'll be a fun watch. Prime times, or not prime time, but CBS late afternoon, their normal later afternoon spot.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that Bennett for Georgia had a tough game against Bama is a good experience. That was like getting his feet wet. Now you're playing a Florida team whose defense is, I would say, maybe similar to Bama. I mean, you're not going to Tuscaloosa. I think that getting that first big game under his belt would help him. He'll maybe be a little more confident this game. Again, I think you said this is a matchup of Florida's offense with the tight end and the quarterback against a Georgia defense who, along with Kentucky, is probably the top two defenses in the SEC. So who's going to win that side of the field? Can Georgia keep Florida's offense under control? If they so easily, they win the game. If Florida's offense does what they've been doing and you get in a shootout, I think that benefits Florida. So I think it'll just be a matter of can Georgia's defense step up, and I think it's wait to be seen, because from a Georgia perspective, defensively, you had a great 30 minutes against Bama where your young quarterback did his part, didn't make any mistakes. And the second half, you had a 30 minutes where your young quarterback played like he was young, made a pick, and all of a sudden your defense is on the back of its heels. So we've seen almost two versions of Georgia. We've also, when Georgia played Tennessee, they were down at half to Tennessee. And second half, they were a team who was forcing turnovers and couldn't give up a first down. So Georgia's kind of been a bipolar football team where they have great halves and bad halves. And I expect we might get something similar to that. So I wouldn't bet this game. I'd be nervous to bet it just because there's so many different scenarios I think with this game to play out. But it should be a fun game, entertaining. It's unfortunate there's not fans there. They always pack that place up and split the fans down the middle like they do for Texas and Oklahoma. So it's definitely, it's not the world's largest cocktail party.
Yeah, I was going to say, right.
Probably not going to let people there, but this.
Well, who knows?
I wouldn't.
You know what I mean?
Who
knows?
I wouldn't bet the game just because I don't have a strong enough lean on who I think, but I would lean, if I had to, I would pick Georgia, but I just wouldn't bet it personally myself.
Number 13, sounds weird to say this, but I know there's some folks from Indiana that are listening to this show on the Grueling Truth. 2-0, number 13, Indiana, versus number 23, 1-1, Michigan. And this is kind of crazy. 36.5 points they both average, 25.5 and 28 as far as giving it up. Total yards, it's kind of crazy. 466 Michigan, 279 total. Indiana's played some tight games in the last chunk. I know it's last year, but even then, Purdue, they won in double overtime, 44-41. Lost to what probably is a better team last year of Tennessee, 23-22 in a bowl game. Just beat Penn State, 36-35. So they've been grinding out these tight games, and 3 out of the last 4 games, not this year, but Michigan has lost. Now, Ohio State and Alabama are 2 of them, so let's calm down on that one. But one thing that stands out right here, and we just kind of talked about this game, so we don't need to really break it down too much, obviously, because we did break it down a little bit, but 75 yards rushing average. It doesn't seem like you're going to be able to hold the ball and get it done. I got Michigan winning a competitive game.
I just think the college angle, it's just, it tells you got to take Michigan. Indiana is off to a great start this year. Michigan just blew it against their rivals. I don't see how Michigan doesn't win this game. That's just college DNA. I think you got to take the Wolverines. Yeah, I think
And
you have to.
people in Ann Arbor are not going to give two shits about where Indiana's ranked in this game. You know what I mean? They'll be like, no, I don't care. We lost the game. Screw that. Even if Indiana went up in the top 10, they'd still be like, but it's Indiana and it's not basketball. You know what I mean? I mean, wow, he'd be in trouble. And it's kind of weird to say, oh, he'd be in trouble when it's a 3.5 point spread that they're favored. Indiana is ranked. They're 2-0 this year, so they're not bummy. But it's still, people will go, I don't care. It's Indiana. You know what I mean? They'll just go right to it. But yeah. Did I cut you off at the end? I'm sorry.
No. You're good. You're good. Yeah, the big man on campus theory has to be going on. And if you're Michigan, you lose this game to Indiana. I mean, now you really got to be, what are we playing the season for? Like, you beat the Gophers on a primetime ABC game. Hey, we're optimistic. You choke against Sparty. This is about as much of a must win as I've seen in college football this early in the year. I don't know. Again, Harbaugh gets crap every year. That's true. I'm sure it's going to happen again. But if you're Chris, if you're Indiana, dude, you got to be riding high. And if you can knock off Michigan too after, I don't know. It'd be a hell of a start.
We're going to lead. We'll probably lead with that if they do that, man. That would be pretty crazy. Friday night football, Miami and NC State. Miami's favored by 10. Could be interesting. NC State's kind of hit or miss, but when they hit, they're a pretty good team anyway. And this is a big game on the West Coast for both these squads, but especially BYU, who stand at 7-0 right now. And this one starts a little bit later, like almost 3 hours later, so you'll be able to watch both games. Number 9, BYU. Number 21, Boise State. I'm picking BYU just because they've played more games. I mean, honestly, sometimes that, they're just into it more. They're just ready to go. But I got to say, Boise State obviously has that tradition of being a good club and the winning attitude, whatever you want to say. And they've looked good so far this year. 2.5 point spread. BYU's favored. This is a pick'em type game. I'm going with BYU though.
I think they're just the better team. I think they've been playing about as good as they can. And to give BYU credit, Chris, they've been playing teams that maybe they're not that's not up to their par. But for the most part, besides that game against UTSA, they've pretty much taken care of business almost every game. This is a team that's been up 30-40 in almost every game just to show, hey, we're on a mission. Clearly they think they can run the table. This is probably their toughest game left on their schedule. They're lucky they didn't have to play Utah, which is a fun rivalry game in that itself too. But yeah, if you're BYU, you're looking at, again, there's no guaranteed make the Final Four, but you're looking at an undefeated season, having a hell of a story to brag about. So you get past Boise, and it's really going to be back to a bunch of probably 15 to 20 point spreads. This is your one game where you really got to just suck it up and find a way to win. Their quarterback Wilson's having himself a hell of a year, so they could easily win this game. They've ran the ball down people's throats. Their defense plays exceptional, good football, but maybe this is going to be a game that could expose them. I mean, BYU really hasn't been tested all this year, so maybe we've seen a team that's really good but has beat up on weaker opponents. Maybe now they get tested. Maybe they just, for some reason, are not on their on game. But I would take BYU with the points, Chris. I just think there's too much in their direction. And we, like you said, we've seen a lot more of their sample. What have we seen in Boise this year? We don't even know what kind of squad they have. So I'm with you. I would lean BYU.
They had a young quarterback that just came in the game last week. There's no actually excuse right now that I've seen why their starter didn't start, but he looked pretty good. I'll give him that. As far as the hardcore level, whether it's going to be a barn burner or just more hardcore, pay attention to this. Small school, number 25 Liberty, 6-0 going against Virginia Tech, 14.5 points Virginia Tech. Can they actually win by that? Will it be a little bit closer? Hardcore here, Michigan State and Iowa. Iowa's 0-2, dude. They need that win just because. That's pretty crazy right there. And then there's another game I wanted to point out. what the hell game was it? I actually think Oklahoma State, Kansas State, both of them coming off losses, is going to be pretty interesting. And also, where did it go? Oh, here, I got one for you. We've been keeping track of Arizona State here, over the last couple of years since a friendly coach that tries to win every game. You play to win the game. He's got the recruiting going a little bit. You're starting to see some turn in the corner, so to speak. And this is actually turning the corner, if you guys know what that means. But what's going on with USC? And for some reason, I just lost the damn game. Where the hell is it? Where did it go? It's gone. I can't find it. Oh, yeah, here we go. 10.5-point favorite over Arizona State. I mean, I'm looking at that number going, that might be in my against the spread. Number 20 USC, too. They get a 20th ranking. They earned that how? What do you think there, sir?
Why do we even got to bring them up? I've been having a good show. All I do is rip on the coach. Whenever I predict they win, they lose. Whenever I predict they lose, they win. This is a football team where I fell in love with freaking Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart in like 03-04, and I've been a fan since. I do remember crying of happiness, tears of joy, when they beat Penn State in a Rose Bowl like 5 years ago. And besides that, I've really had no moments of happiness since.
And that's why he's on the team, right? That's why he's still the coach, because of that.
Yeah, literally, Sam Darnold saved his time, because that's the one good year that Clay Helton's had overall. Period. That's it. Like, he's like 2-13 as a road favorite. He's just not a good coach at all. And everyone thought he was going to get fired. Then they kept him. I would sure as hell not bet USC to win minus 10.5 against Arizona State, who seems to always beat them in Arizona State. I guess we're at home. I'm sure there's no fans because they're in California.
No, not even. They probably don't have media there.
So again, what has UFC done to be 20th? I'm sure they have top end recruits like they always do, but we'll see.
I think you just said it. You're talking about Reggie Bush and all that. I think that's why they're ranked
20th. I hope they win. I do. I hope they run the table. I hope they win the DAB and Pac-12 this year. I'd love to see them back in the national spotlight. But I've seen nothing from Clay Helton to ever get me to believe that we could come back and be a prominent figure until he's gone or until he gets a better recruiting class, or if we just stop being a team that always takes dumb penalties. I don't know. For a long time, it was we can't beat Stanford or Oregon, and now that issue's kind of gone away. We just can't beat enough teams to win enough games. So I'm just going to be pessimistic and say, hey, prove something to me for week 1 USC, and we'll go from there, because I'm not going to get all high and mighty because I've done that shit too much. Now, with that being said, a game you did mention, who's right, has the same kickoff time. I don't think Liberty should be a 14.5-point dog. I'm not saying they're going to win, but this Liberty offense can score. And Vatek, I believe, gave up 54 or 45, my dyslexic side kicking in against the Tar Heels. So, again, I'm not saying that Liberty's offense is the Tar Heels either, but this Liberty team can put up points.
Yeah.
And Vatek's defense,
something to look at.
Vatek's defense, now maybe they've got all their people back from COVID. Now, in fairness, that could be true.
That's true. They had like 23 out.
Yeah, because that game when Carolina did light them up, they were missing a ton of people in their secondary. So in fairness, that could be happening. Maybe their defense is back. But still, 14.5 points is a lot for a team who has not been superb this year. And Liberty, what do they have to lose? Like, we're talking about different mindsets for college football. And I know that we're predicting an Indiana loss, Chris, but Vatek, Liberty, dude, you're playing with house's money. You're 6-0, you're ranked. You're a freaking FCS school. Like, this could be another huge win for your program.
Yeah, they put up a bunch of numbers, so it'll be something to look at here. All right, let's close her out with the crappy pick of the week. And why don't you take over? You can start by talking about Nick Starkel for San Jose State.
Well, hey, the Spartans, I told you they used to be one of the worst programs in the whole country, and they found a way to just they're starting to turn the page, Chris. They're turning the page. They're
Five
realizing, hey,
TDs, dude. 467. That's pretty crazy for passing yards.
that they're turning they're changing things around. And from one perspective, you almost at some point you have to kind of be like, okay, like we're no longer the doormat of college football. Like, what do we have to do to get better? But from a guy who I'm a coach, like I also kind of get the standpoint of like, dude, as a college football coach, if your program is garbage, that might be a harder coaching job in reality than being a Nick Saban or Dabo Swinney. Now, I get that might sound outlandish, but Saban and Swinney get top 5 stars every single year. If you're one of the top
Now they
worst,
did
programs
both those
in college
programs
football,
sucked though when they took them over, so we
True,
got to keep that
but-
in there. But I know what you're saying.
yeah, but they were never. Bam was never like 115 out of 118 in cat.
Yeah.
So massive credit to San Jose State. Like they used to be like a top 5 worst program in the country. Now they're winning games. They did win last week. They actually had a very nice passing attack day. So again, we gave out another. I'm just saying, we're now 5-1 on the year, Chris.
5-1, baby. 5-1 on the crafty, crappy pick of the week. What do we got lined up for this week, sir?
Oh dear Lord. You know what? I'm normally a guy that is gonna look at a spread and say the spread's got to be close to pick the game. But I think that this spread is absolutely bullshit. And okay, so this and you're gonna gripe at me, but I'll even let you pick the spread. In fair, we normally pick just straight money line or winners, but we can do the spread if you want. But I think the spread is insane. We're going to the SEC, Chris.
Oh boy,
we're going SEC country. The top dog nation team, the top dog in the country. But I'm picking this game because this truly is a hideous game. Because I got to get my Kiffin quote in. So Lane Kiffin, he walked into Vanderbilt last week and said, "Hey, what up, boys? We're not going to let the refs screw us. We're going to take care of business." And Lane Kiffin and Matt Corral hung up some numbers on Vandy. They did their job. So credit to my boy Lane Kiffin, hit the quote and moving on. So Vandy's
like,
0-4.
okay, where the hell's the? It's like, okay, Ole Miss, I can't find them. Okay, keep going. All right.
Vandy's been getting their teeth kicked in.
Okay,
and Mississippi State's offense, ever since LSU game, it has been.
Yeah, we just crowned them. We crowned them after that LSU game, right?
You didn't score on Bama. You scored 14 points against A&M, but 7 of those were on a defensive touchdown. You scored 2 points against Kentucky, and you lost to Arkansas, who now turned out to actually be a respectable team. So, Chris, I don't know if we've ever done an SEC crappy pick of the week, but we got one. We got Vandy walking into Mississippi State, the Dak Prescott University, and I hope Dak gets better next year because, God, the Cowboys need him. Again, this might be the first ever SEC crafty pick of the week. Chris, take it away. Enjoy this one, man. We normally don't get through the SEC, but this is a game that deserves your breakdown, and I want to hear it.
Dude, this, it's the SEC and all, but this game sucks. You are correct. Vandy, I mean, this is exactly how we break down. This fits into the segment because Vandy only puts up 11 fucking points. They put up 11 points. And they faced Ole Miss, who can't stop anybody. South Carolina's not great. My goodness gracious. They give up 38, and they put up 11 fucking points. Wow. Okay, almost, that juggernaut offense is close to putting up 15 a game now. So that's coming around. They give up 30. That's the only problem. They averaged 30 yards a game rushing per game. 30 yards. And it's not 318 is a big number, but it's not like some kind of 398 or some shit like that. And Costello wishes he was back with the Cardinals at this point because he's not doing good. He's got 10 picks. Yeah, this is a shitty game. You are correct here, sir. Oh man, of course you want to pick Mississippi State because of that spread, which by the way is 19.5 points. But if you're willing to give me Vandy for 19.5, I may just take that fucking thing. I may have to. I've been. Man. Thing is, they got beat by LSU 41-7, dude. Oh man, why'd I have to see that? Shit. Wow, this one's good here, man. This one actually has me a little bit with the spread involved. I think Mississippi State will get the job done, but can they do it by 19.5? Oh my God. They're due to put up some points. God. And they're playing a shitty team. And like I said, I mean, even LSU beat them 41-7. And this was in October. So this one's tough to do. I mean, they average 15 points. They're going to win by 19? Like, think about that. But I think, oh, God, this one. I'm going to go Mississippi State. I'll fucking take the goddamn. I am pissed about this part. I'll take the 19.5. Oh, jeez. Because we have to do it in this game because otherwise.
Yeah.
I'll take the 19.5 points. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm going to do it. Mississippi State, the Bulldogs. You can't just walk in acting like a Commodore into Davis Wade Stadium at Scott Field. Oh, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was Davis Wade Stadium at Scott Field. Tickets low as $60, so they're trying to get their bang for their buck because normally it would be a little higher. So yeah, I'm going Mississippi State somehow, some way. They're gonna win by 19.5, even though they average 15 points a game.
All right, and as I've enjoyed doing it this year to wrap up it, we compare alumni. So we'll have Lavoie. So what school has a better alumni? Clearly, both these schools are kind of proud schools, so the alumni is going to be interesting. All right, starting off with Mississippi State. John Grisham is number one. Obviously, a very talented author. I think my dad's read all of his books. I've read a couple, so all right, good start there. Rafael Palmeiro, who is a former steroid slugger in baseball. Okay, respectable. Will Clark, good baseball player. After that, gets a little bit dicey. Eric Dampier was a former Mavs NBA player. Buck Showalter, a respectable longtime manager in baseball. Papelbon, a hot-headed closer. After that, Fred Smoot. If you're a Viking fan, he covers the part of the world that the ocean doesn't cover, was his quote. He was also involved in a boat party, one may say. We got after that, it's pretty Machine Gun Kelly. I'm guessing that's the band, or is that a former mobster? That is, actually the former American gangster from Memphis, Tennessee. Holy shit! Chris, out of all the things we've done, we normally don't have many like true gangsters from a school. Damn. Well, that's points for something. I'm not sure what points that is, but if you got a bunch of like old school gangsters, like dude, that might win that might take the cake.
That's
and my boy
Dak
Prescott, my boy Dak and Fletcher Cox, who's a stud for the Eagles. So that's a pretty damn respectable. You got you got a former mobster, dude. Okay, all right. Vanderbilt's gonna be a little more bougie, Chris. I think they're a little more of a money bragging kind of school.
I think it's the hardest school to get into in the SEC. Maybe the only hard.
His name's third on the list, but I mean, when you think Vandy, you got to think good old flashy Jay Cutler. Okay, you got Jay there. You got Al Gore, a respectable politician. Then you got a bunch of people who I really don't know their names of, just because they're a bunch of political people. Ross Perot Jr. Sims is a.
He had a plan back in the 90s, early 90s, to take down the deficit. He ended up being independent and took away from Bush. That's how Clinton got in, Ross
Perot. Then, of course, you got a country singer in Dierks Bentley. Molly Sims is a former SI or maybe former current SI swimsuit model. Will Purdue, former Bulls player on the Jordan teams. Then you got a handful of baseball players. Walker Buehler, screw him. Dansby Swanson's a Brave. Kumar Rocker was a stud pitcher for them a couple of years ago. Skip Bayless went there. Yeah.
Well, now we know who won. Yeah, that's stop right there. Just stop right there. That we already know who won.
All right. So shout out to Machine Gun Kelly and his mobster self, my boy Dak Prescott. Tip of the cap to the Mississippi State alumni, which Chris is going with too. So we're both going with Mississippi State in the situation, Chris. I like our chances. To wrap it up, if you're listening to this podcast tonight, hopefully you've already voted or will be voting tomorrow. Tomorrow is a good day to vote. God knows this country needs everyone's opinion to kind of get back on track. So again, wear a mask, keep voting, keep trying to stay safe. This year 2020 has, I believe, 58 days left in it. So hopefully we get it over and 2021 brings us more happiness and relatively calmness in life. But until then, enjoy watching college football. We always appreciate your support and listening to this podcast. We really do. The boys are out tonight. Peace.